Hello, my name is Dr. Peter Gillis. I have a doctorate in organizational psychology, and I have been very engaged with AI over the last, let's say, 5 or 6 years. And if you'd like to read something that I've written on that, you can go to researchgate.net and find the article, The Gods of Cyber Anthropology. Oh my goodness. It's an easier read than what it sounds like. But what we're going to talk about here is generative AI. There's all kinds of AI, and if you're an expert in AI, this is not the video for you, because I will probably hallucinate some things. A very key term in AI, hallucinations. I will probably hallucinate some things, and if you watch this, a couple months from when it was made, it will probably already be a little bit out of date. Yes, that's how fast things are going. But we want to really focus on what is AI, generative AI, going to mean for the banking industry. And I'd like to do that by kind of drawing it out for you. So let's take a look at that. So what we're really working with here are large language models, or LLMs. And the most famous of these would probably be ChatGPT. And we're into ChatGPT version 4 now. And these large language models, we've put them together. And by combining these large language models, which are just predicting, what is the next word going to be, what is the next concept going to be, what is the next thing going to be, we're combining them together to create a foundation model. Now, in the past, you would have something like, AI would be kind of boxed off, and it would get a specific set of data. So you've had these distinct AI models, very specific, and they would kind of only do one thing. So they would have a database of words, and they would spit out one kind of task. But with this foundation model, well, now we have a robust model that can not only take over from all of those small AI models, but it can go out and branch out into all kinds of models, all kinds of tasks. It can do all kinds of different things. It's kind of a Swiss Army knife of AI models. And what it's being trained on is unsupervised and unstructured data. That's what it needs, a big, fat universe of unsupervised and unstructured data. So here you've got the AI models, these discrete models. They're doing specific tasks, and they're spitting out very straightforward kinds of analyses. And that's good, that's great, and they do a really good job at this. What we're going to be looking at is the foundation model, building your own foundation model. And in many cases, especially in banking, but this could also be in the pharmaceutical industry, this could be in any data-heavy industry where we are taking your data and we're jamming it into this foundation model, if you will, and coming up with all kinds of new tasks for it to do. But because it's looking at a huge amount of uncategorized, unstructured data, not only is it going to come up with new tasks that you can do, but it's also going to come up with even more insights. In fact, it's going to tell you what you didn't know you didn't know. And that's one of the benefits of this foundation model. Now, this gets ever more sophisticated because we're going to take your model, Not just anybody's model, not just the Chat GPT online. As powerful as it is, you want to have your model doing your stuff. And it's kind of like a big fish. You want your model munching away on your data. Now, as we get your model on your data, and it's here, this kind of shark is eating up this data and chewing on this data and getting all kinds of different perspectives on it, you can also have what I'll call a mirror model. And the mirror model will help you avoid what is often called hallucinations. In other words, AI just sometimes lies, and hallucination sounds better than lie. And basically, the mirror model is looking at your model and the data that it's chewing on and saying, is that correct? And this is sort of a check, so that the data that it will be spitting out is really reliable. So these generative AI foundational models based on enormous amounts of data that's, typically unstructured, and it's chewing through this like a great shark and finding different connections that maybe we would never have come up with in the past. Now, this has to deliver a very clear strategic concept called competitive advantage. Now, competitive advantage means that you have an advantage over the competitors, and what we really want is one that is valuable, so it brings us more money. We want one that's rare, and with all the initiatives around AI and machine learning, finding that rare approach might be a little bit difficult. But here in the beginning of AI and machine learning and building our own foundational models with our own data, perhaps rare is not as important because, we're getting that first input, that first fruit of our efforts. But certainly at some time, valuable and rare is going to be important. The third thing you want with this is that it should be hard to copy, inimitable in strategy language. It should be hard to copy. If you do something and the competitors hear about it, can they copy it? And ideally, you want something that they can't copy or that would be very hard to copy. And finally, you want something that will be non-substitutable, that someone can't come in from outside and bring something different on top of it. So those would be the four areas of VRINN, valuable, rare, inimitable, and non-substitutable, that would constitute competitive advantage. Now, competitive advantage will be relative to other people in the banking and finance industries. So it's not an absolute competitive advantage. You're not competing against airlines or pharmaceutical industry. You're competing relative to other people in your industry. And in 1982, a new concept popped into the world, and this was called vaporware. Now, vaporware is probably a marketing term that a company comes out, announces something is coming, the whole world looks at it and says, oh, what's coming? What's coming? They say, oh, the new 2.0 is coming, or the new programs, or a new way of doing banking is coming, and everybody's waiting for it, and then 6 months later it wasn't actually there. And vaporware is a very handy thing to test how the market will look at things, but also to get your competitors a little bit wobbly and a little bit unsure about, if they're doing that, then maybe we should do something. And it is a way to sort of push the market a little bit and just see what is going on. Now, some of that feels maybe a little bit unethical, and we'll talk about ethics later, but this is the concept of vaporware. And if you're into playing online games, You had a game, very popular game called Half-Life, and then you had Half-Life 2, and then Half-Life 3 is coming, and it's never come. So, this was sort of put out there maybe to see, is there enough interest in this? There is a lot of vaporware regarding machine learning and AI. There is a ton of vaporware, people promising this and that, and a brave new future, and all of these kinds of things. If you listen to the experts on this, yes, AI is completely changing the landscape. But especially in finance and banking, it is evolution rather than revolution, at least at this time around 2023. What we see in trading, just take trading. Trading, you can't just go off of historical data. You've got to be pulling in the data as it's happening in order to do, for example, high volume trading, or to somehow get in front of the competition. These early signals, what I would call in my book on cultural agility, a strategic radar. They're building a strategic radar, but the inputs are only relevant right now. And so that makes using AI very, very, very difficult. Sometimes the model is working great, sometimes it's not working very well at all. And the problem is we don't really know how the traceability of it is not really clear. So we're not really sure how that happens. Lots of vaporware, lots of stuff about it's really going to be great. What we actually see is that it's much more incremental, much more evolutionary than revolutionary. So in order to make what you're doing not vaporware, in order to make what you're doing actually give you the competitive advantage, something that's valuable, something that's hopefully rare, something that's going to be really hard to copy and is non-substitutable, you're going to need to put a whole lot of effort, get a whole lot of people together, multifunctional, and at some point in your organization, I hope you do get a number of absolutely dedicated professionals for implementing AI kinds of competitive advantage. But getting people together and talking about it, and of course at IEDC, the Bled School of Management, we have a 2-day workshop that is focused on doing exactly that. Getting people together, getting them integrated in their ideas, and finding out what can we actually do in our business relative to the competition. So it's not just code monkeys from the basement, and it's not just marketing people from the 5th floor. It's all of these coming together and talking about how we can actually implement AI, generative models, foundation models within our company using our data and getting competitive advantage relative to the people in our industry.
Soon we will put my excellent plan to action. How long is this going to take?
So how long might it take to put together an AI plan to get that competitive advantage? Well, maybe as long as it took to do this webinar. And that was about 15 seconds. Yes, you can go to ChatGPT, anybody can go there, and put in, make an AI webinar. It'll pop something out. Now, of course, that's the vaporware, that's the sexy part. You do still have to look at it and say, oh, that looks like a really competent program. What are the references? What are the papers? You got to read the papers. You got to go through all the stuff. Well, the client wants this and not that. So, you have to massage it. But it gives you a really good place to start. And so maybe competitive advantage is also looking at you personally in your work. How could it make you more efficient operationally? Now, what we could do is ask ChatGPT to, let's say, write a letter in the voice of a banker. And how does it do this? Well, it's just taking huge amounts of data and anticipating the next word. What would be the voice of a banker? How would you write things? How does English work? Or how does German work? Or how does, whatever language you've got. Write an email, write a letter in the voice of a banker that explains why a 1-hour webinar on AI like this, its applications to finance and that kind of thing, is a good idea. So let's just type that in to ChatGPT and voila, bang, here comes this letter. It may not be perfect, but it might be something to help get you started in thinking about these things. Well, let's continue with this in your own personal competitive advantage here, and maybe you could write into ChatGPT something like, make a 2-week plan, including reading materials, for someone who needs to understand how AI can improve, let's say, customer service experiences in banks. Bang, something comes up. Now, it's not always completely reliable, and I've already said something about AI hallucinates, AI lies, AI makes it up, okay? And so we have to be a little bit careful with that. But you can already probably feel the efficiency, the added innovation to your own work, the ideas that maybe it would have taken you quite a while to think of, and here they are delivered to you and making you a little bit more effective. So if we look at different departments within a bank, where might the competitive advantage be found using these models on the data that we have? Well, in marketing and sales, we might get personalized marketing programs, helping us with social media to grind through all the data that our social media interactions are delivering, and also to understand technical sales content better. For example, one way of doing this is to say, okay, summarize this data for me. And this gives you, of course, you can feel you're more effective and you're more efficient. The danger is you'd also become dumb because you're totally reliant on, if you know the movie The Matrix, you're totally reliant on every time you want to drive a car or fly a helicopter, the Matrix downloads it to your head.
Operator.
Tank, I need a pilot program for a B-212 helicopter. Let's go.
You go off and do it, and then you forget it that quickly. So there is a little bit of a danger here. We can also do this for operations, generating task lists for effective execution of a given activity. So we're in operations in a bank, and this is what we're supposed to be doing, and we put that into just normal old ChatGPT online where everybody can go into it, and it will give you some ideas about how to efficiently approach that. In IT or engineering, we can also look at writing and documenting and reviewing code, which we'll get back to because the backbone of banking is COBOL, and oh dearie me, that has been a problem for decades. Well, we can also use this in the risk and legal departments, pulling all kinds of documentation together to answer very complex, probably internationally complex questions. Also questions about legal precedents and laws across companies and international agreements, and not to mention annual reports and pulling those together as well. So AI can help you get that competitive advantage for yourself. You can already start using it now, and we've seen how you can do that. But also taking the models, the foundation models, taking your own data and pushing that in there and helping those models show you all kinds of new and interesting and different ways of looking at the data you have, coming up with new insights to drive competitive advantage. The models that we'll use, these foundational AI models, will allow us to automatically learn and adapt in real time, certainly when we're talking about a trading strategy. This is very difficult, but what it gets us away from is a linear idea. We take a bunch of data points and we say, what's the line of best fit? That does work, and actually that works better in certain momentum markets than a very nonlinear AI model. So if we just take a linear curve, we see, okay, well, it's going this direction. If you take an AI model, it's nonlinear, and you can see, we know it's going to go here and there and here and up and down and over, and those are more accurate, but sometimes less helpful, and therefore make less money for our clients and for our institutions than you might expect from AI vaporware. So again, implementing these things, it is a tool. It is something that we need to think in evolutionary terms and incremental terms. It's a little bit more like hard work than maybe we've been told. So in strongly trending markets, things like COVID that all of a sudden roll in, this really does upset these foundational models when we're talking about markets. And the biggest challenges that banks and financial institutions have when it comes to these new tools are three. One is, what happens when your super duper model loses you money? How do you deal with that? How do you trace it back? How do you understand why you lost money and didn't make money, but the competition did? And this is the second one. Do you really understand the model? One of the big issues we have with AI models is they have self-generating learning, so that we don't just put the data in and it learns from the data and spits out interesting things. It does do that, but it also has a component of learning and teaching itself. But as it's teaching itself, it's not informing you and me how it's doing that. And so many of the things with self-driving cars or insights into markets, we can't trace it back. And so we don't really understand. So you combine one with two, we might have lost money and we're not really sure how the model works. And now we're feeling pretty bad about number three because it all feels like a black box. These are some things that we might need to really consider and think about, and that's why getting your team together, getting a multidisciplinary team to come in for a couple of days to talk about these things with each other will help you through that process and help you eliminate those common issues. Well, let's talk about leveraging AI, leveraging these foundational models that are kind of the Swiss Army knife of IT and technology and learning. And let's apply them to, the big problem I mentioned before, which is legacy software and legacy systems within banks. How do we get rid of this foundation that's being cobbled together with old bricks and all that kind of thing over the years? And what you can do is you can simply go into ChatGPT and ask it, what do we need to do? And what would the script look like? What would the code look like? And you can even specify the kind of code you want to see. In this example, I've got Python. So what we might do is we might type in something like, please write a code in Python that would create an AI for my company. Now that's pretty vague, but look what ChatGPT does with it. It goes through and it says, well, you've got to define the problem. You think, well, yeah, I know that. But it is giving you a very comprehensive way of looking at it and kind of a checklist. And maybe you could have come up with it yourself, but maybe ChatGPT will help you. So it says define the problem, collect data, and choose an AI approach. And you can do this with many different partners. You can You can try to make your own foundational model, or you can look outside. Probably in finance and banking, you probably want to use your own data and come up with your own model for competitive advantage. Well, build your model, evaluate and tune the model, deploy the thing. You think, well, this is just a standard project management. And yeah, in many ways it is, but here's something just absolutely fantastic. It comes up with the code. Now, we're using ChatGPT. This is simple stuff. And we put in a simple question, a kind of a vague question, and whammo, it came up with some code here. Now, I've never programmed in Python. I couldn't tell you if this is going to make a butterfly fly across your screen, or if it is actually going to replace all of the technical problems in your foundational software. But you get the idea here that you're able to access way more than you ever could before. And of course, you want to have the right people, the techie people going into this kind of stuff and saying, okay, I understand this, I understand that. Maybe we need to modify this here and that there. But you can imagine the huge effectiveness jump that this gives to you in a situation where you're trying to implement AI. So if we want to get away from those old legacy systems, this is our opportunity to let something go through there that is trained on our systems, understands our industry, and can do these things for us, or at least give us a clear indication of which direction we need to go in and what we actually need to think about. In the end, however, humans are still responsible. And if AI comes up with some dumb stuff and you follow it and it turns out badly, well, it's just like pre-AI times. You may be held accountable for something like that.
There are two people stuck on an escalator and we need help. Now, would somebody please do something?
And that might not be very pretty. So there's still going to be, at least in the near future, there's still going to be the idea of AI is like a sophisticated autopilot, but we still do need human pilots to make sure that we're looking at the right things, that we haven't missed some kind of important parameters, and that the AI hasn't overlooked something that is key to our success. So let's go ahead and take a look at how this might help us improve customer relations. Naturally, we want the interactions with our customers to be as positive and effective and efficient as it can be. And one thing that we have seen come up very obviously in the last few years is the use of bots. Now, these bots interact with you, and they have some advantages. These bots are sometimes irritating. They're getting less irritating. They're getting more human-like. They're able to answer more questions, and they are able to remember previous client interactions and allow your customer service reps to concentrate on higher value services than just answering some very basic questions for a customer. This will also help relationship managers synthesize reports, account for risk and compliance, to have a much deeper insight into that, and to verify important data that otherwise might have taken a long time to sort of pull together and compare. Now, here's one of the insights that you probably won't get from any other university other than the Bled School of Management, and that is the insight that AI is actually pushing back the complexity horizon for us. Some people may call this the irreducible and reducible uncertainty. So it's taking the uncertainty that normally would be irreducible. In other words, it's uncertainty that's out there. We can't sort of see past it. And we're pushing that horizon. We're pushing the horizon of what we can actually see farther and farther out. So if we look at complexity, we have an issue that we have in the bank, and we try to look back and say, why did this issue happen? And that reminds me of an old poem I'd like to share with you. So when we're talking about complexity, well, let's take an old poem. It's a poem about a horseshoe nail. And the poem goes like this. For want of a nail, the shoe was lost. For want of a shoe, the horse was lost. For want of a horse, the rider was lost. For want of a rider, the battle was lost. For want of a battle, the kingdom was lost. All for want of a horseshoe nail. Now, if you tried to go and find a kingdom that had been lost, and you wanted to say, well, the reason this kingdom was lost, we can trace it all the way back to this nail, you'd have a really, really tough time. That's complexity. Yeah, that's complexity. And what AI is doing for us now is it's moving back the horizon of complexity. In other words, you can trace out things that would otherwise be untraceable. But AI is allowing us to take immense amounts of data, huge amounts of data, and make those kinds of extrapolations. In other words, it's turning complex issues into complicated issues. And complicated issues we can deal with. The danger is we're not really sure how it does it. So the simple problems in your business where we know what it is and we know how to handle it, that's not going to be much of an issue. The complicated things, well, we can learn and we can fix those, and we can have a meeting and work it out. But it's the complex things where, well, number one, leadership is needed, because we need to say, okay, it's complex. We can't really get our head completely around it. So we need leaders to say, what is our value system? How are we going to approach these things? How are we going to make decisions, even when our decisions aren't really based on clear data? We're pushing that back farther and farther. We can see deeper and deeper into complex, unstructured, enormous amounts of data and pull out relevant, value-adding things for us. So one thing that does make customers very, very happy is making them money. And so how would we do that with some really practical examples? Well, you would have AI looking at trading trends across global markets and doing this ever faster and with ever more inputs, so that it builds up a picture for us that is much more comprehensive. Again, that strategic radar, understanding the lay of the topography of the land or the future that we are going into. Another way is, this complexity. How are we going to get more insights out of a complexity? And one that has come up within the last year is that when we look in the United States at older males who are married, these people are more likely to panic sell. And you think, well, in a way that's kind of funny, but in another way, that is amazing information to have that maybe we wouldn't have been able to pull up. But now that you know it, what kind of product are you going to sell these people? Okay, and of course this goes for any other kinds of demographics. What are you going to do with married females or single females or other institutions, this kind of stuff. So these are the things that AI is able to deliver to us to improve our performance and to improve customer service experiences. Well, let's talk a bit about driving innovation strategies. And you may think, well, wait a minute. Isn't AI the innovation? And in a way, it is. And if you ask ChatGPT what things you shouldn't use AI to do, well, creativity comes in there, but also innovation. And so, it's very difficult to get this idea in our heads. AI is the innovation, but can it actually make us more innovative? Well, it can make us more effective and it can make us more efficient. It might bring us new insights, but can it actually make an innovation strategy? And that's a question. So it may be down to you and to me to do what some other AI influencers have suggested, and that is to use our empathy. Use AI to build more empathy with customers and clients. What does the market need? Understanding what people actually want and using very large data sets that otherwise would have been a bit opaque in order to get that done. And I think probably the big limitation here is that the key aspects of your business that you need to integrate with the outside world and make a success are organizational culture, your strategy, and leadership. And these are very hard to farm out to AI, certainly in the way it exists at the moment. So those are still the purview of people. That's where we still need people to sit down and make the decision and allow AI to be the driver and catalyst of ever deeper insights into what was before highly complex data that maybe we couldn't really see into very well. And maybe we can see a little example of this if we look into what one programmer was doing with AI. He was teaching it to bowl. And bowling, it turns out, well, is a pretty difficult thing. But as he gave more and more iterations to this AI program, it was able to learn how to get the ball, throw the ball, and knock the pins over. Now, it didn't do it like you and I might do it. We're much smoother in how we move our bodies. But it did come up with some innovative ways, and one of them was to arch your back and then to use the power of your arched back to launch the ball down toward the pins. And we see that there is a problem when AI is thinking about the human body doing things. Because it doesn't really think much about self-preservation. Yeah, this is probably something that you and I could do once. If we were hooked up to the electrical grid, we could probably snap a ball like that, but it might just kill us. So, here already we see some of the limitations of what AI can do. It can come up with really innovative things to do, like snapping your back, or even coming up with balls that look a little bit more like golf balls than the traditional smooth bowling ball. So there are some interesting things there, but the innovative strategy of coming up with a different ball didn't come out of AI. No, this was a question put to AI. And I think that's probably how we should usually see AI driving innovation. Because oddly, the more complex a situation is, the better it is to use AI. We can see deeper, we can push back that complexity horizon. But it also means that AI will tend to come up with suboptimal answers. So it's really complex, and AI will come up with some wonky idea, like bowling is very complex. It'll come up with some wonky idea about how to do it, and it will shake and jitter, and it's very suboptimal. Now, of course, you go through enough iterations, and maybe AI will be the best bowler in the world. But for the moment, complexity very often leads to AI coming up with suboptimal answers that are maybe less elegant than what we would expect. And so here's again the opportunity for human thought, human creativity, human innovation, and understanding, what are we going to reward the AI for doing, and what are we going to punish the AI for doing? And in that way, it really makes us think more deeply about the businesses that we are in. Now, especially in banking and finance, we want to think about things like, risk, and how we might be able to use AI to optimize our risk management. Now, when talking about risk management, we can use AI to optimize certain parameters, develop personalized offerings, arrange ever more data, unstructured data very often, to get a better idea of the kinds of customers and clients that we have. But we can also use it for innovative gaming strategies, if then kind of strategies. If we do these kinds of things, what might be the outcome, and sort of see a little bit that strategic radar again, see a little bit past the horizon that we have now. And probably one of the biggest areas of risk is, not only our current portfolios, we don't want to forget that, but credit risks. People who are coming to us for credit. What can we use AI for there? What are other banks and financial institutions using AI for? Now, we have income and account history, but we can also incorporate browsing and online data. And here we get into some ethical things, but that's the next section. Fraud detections and trading. And trading is improved, but not always, as we've already seen. Purchasing habits, location, browsing behavior, reminders and prompts, which sounds a little bit simple, but when you want to program that in to give reminders and prompts to your customers or your clients, you can do it, but it would take an enormous amount of effort. And here AI can do it, almost at the snap of a finger, a virtual finger to be sure. So it can use large amounts of unstructured market and personal data to draw out insights and opportunities to sell newer and different products to our customers and clients. One example of this is CVCs, that card verification code on your credit card, using dynamic CVCs to reduce fraud. And if you've ever lost your credit card or had it stolen or had somehow used by someone else, you can imagine that those are pretty high bills, and those start to stack up for companies, banks, for American Express, for MasterCard and Visa. These are big expenses and getting bigger. And to be able to put more protections around that should lead to more efficiency and more effectiveness. And so I got the idea, maybe there are customers out there you don't want. Yeah, maybe there are people out there you should just avoid, stranger danger, as it was when I was a kid growing up. So I type into AI, into ChatGPT, which customer demographics should banks completely ignore? Which customer demographics should banks completely ignore? And here is something that leads to the next section with this, which is challenges in AI. The answer to this is no one. And you can see the biases of the programmers coming out in the question. This isn't AI thinking very logically and very rationally. It is someone else putting this in. And you say, how do you know that? There are customer demographics you don't want. And you know that, but you may not be able to say it out loud. Maybe there are some. So we don't want criminals. We don't want people maybe who have felonies. But this starts to roll and it starts to become problematic because maybe we don't want people who disagree with us. So if you are a far left politician, should we close your bank account? If you're a far right politician, should we close your bank account? What does far mean in this case? And wow, so we do see that there are clients that banks don't want, all the way from the obvious ones, people who are trying to steal from us, to people whose politics we disagree with. It's a big question. And if we look at the grain of certainly the Western world, we see that there are people, let's say people over 70 or 75, who are immensely difficult to get to and to serve. They've grown up with banks in their hometowns right around the corner, and now you can't go to a physical bank in many places in Europe. So you have to do something online, but you're an older person, you don't understand it, and then there's an error that pops up, and so it says, go to our website, and then you've got to go to the website, and you can imagine that there are certain customer demographics that are going to be really, really problematic for you to serve. So I'm not saying that we need to make a big push to find out people who should be thrown overboard, but here is a role for you. This is your culture, your strategy, your leadership. You people need to make these kinds of decisions, and AI can help you maybe justify them or give you more insight in how to do them. So here we are at the challenges section, and there are many, many challenges. There are ethical considerations, there are data privacy issues, there is algorithm bias, as we've already seen. Which people should we ignore? Don't ignore anyone, that's not nice, So these are things that we really need to tackle, and we really need to understand about AI. And as we go along here, one of the beauties about AI is it can grab this unstructured data and it can find beautiful things in it. But we do have to think ever more about what is the quality of that data. Because remember, as complexity grows, AI solutions become more and more suboptimal. It's trying to find the balance. And of course, as you build your foundation model on your data, this will get ever better refined, but it is an issue out there that you need to think about. The refresh rate, the velocity of data is increasing exponentially. The quantity of data is increasing exponentially, and it's across all kinds of data. So it's images and text and audio and video as well. So there's this flood of information. We're not sure about the quality, and that is where you need to also help your AI to get the right stuff inputted before it can sort of work its magic. I give you here a little case study about the atomic bomb. Now, how could that be relevant? Well, the atomic bomb changed the world, okay? It changed the world in a way that we might be able to compare to what Google is doing with Google Cloud, or any of the other companies, IBM, working with AI. And what happened was we tried to end a war, and it succeeded. And you may debate the costs of using nuclear bombs on Japan at the time, but it did do what it promised. However, it changed the world. And as soon as other people got it, the cat is out of the bag. Now, in the 1930s, Einstein and some other scientists decided they were going to write a letter and say, look, we don't know. We don't know if this thing will destroy the Earth and the universe as we know it. We need to be careful here, but Once it's out there, once AI is out there, look, we can't get away from it. There is just no getting away from this, just like there was no getting away from the atomic bomb once people knew about it. But a fascinating thing happened. One of the unexpected, the unintended consequences, which are the very most interesting and very most problematic for change management, which we'll talk about next, is that our entire atmosphere was changed. Now there's research on, did it damage the upper atmosphere and that kind of thing, but I'd like to focus on one thing you may have seen in the news, and that is the old wrecks of ships from the Second World War. Many of them have been secretly brought to the surface and turned into all kinds of stuff like razor blades and this kind of thing. And you think, why would anyone do that? Well, when the atomic bomb went off, for the first time, we got a bunch of cesium in the atmosphere. And you think, who cares? I mean, we can't feel it, we can't touch it, there's not really a difference. But the problem with cesium in the atmosphere is that atmosphere, air, is used to make steel. It's used to heat it up. Air is